Hello and welcome to another episode of Teaching Heroes, the teaching podcast where I ask educators, what does it take to turn up every day and teach tomorrow's leaders? And today I have a very special guest, Dr. Jemma King. Thank you for coming on to the podcast.
Thank you so much for having me.
It's really great to have you here, to hear about your expertise and your business. And oh my gosh, I just have so many questions for you. And we're going to hear all about your work, and we're also going to hear about how your work in emotional intelligence and stress-related performance, all of those things, and how that might relate as well to teachers and also teachers coming out of the pandemic as well. But let's start right at the beginning. Dr. Jemma, can you tell us a little bit about who you are and about your business and the work that you do? Yeah,
absolutely. Well, I do a lot of things. So I'm a mum. I've got 3 kids, but primarily, three grown-up teenagers. Yeah. So, primarily I see myself as a teacher. I'm a researcher and a consultant, but what I really do is I spend most of my days trying to get the contents of my skull into the skulls of whoever will listen to me.
Oh, wow. So, it's a very Halloween vibe too. We're recording this in October. It's like there's a bit Halloweeny right there. Yeah, go.
True that. Yeah. So I'm a research fellow at UQ School of Psychology, and so I supervise 3 PhD students on various projects. So things like stress and resilience and mental performance. And so my thing is all from a psychophysiological perspective. So that's really looking at the impact of your body on your brain and your mind and vice versa. And so my research includes populations looking at CEOs. I've got a research project with the US Army Arctic Warfare soldiers in Alaska, emergency room doctors. I've also got a new PhD, and he's looking at emotional intelligence at the British Commando Training Centre, which is kind of like a follow-on from my PhD. And we're also, which is really exciting, we're about to embark on a big study looking at teachers in the US and looking at how their physiology and their stress and their sleep impacts their ability to perform as teachers. So, yeah.
Well, I didn't even know that when I invited you on the podcast. Yeah. Jemma, you're just becoming more and more relevant as we talk.
Well, once we get that going, and I'll probably come back, I'll tell you about it.
Yes, definitely. Yeah. That would be fascinating. Yeah. Yes.
So teaching, I teach at the Sydney University in their MBA program. And so I teach how stress impacts critical thinking and decision making. And I also have a consulting business where I run lots of programs and seminars on stress and human performance, leadership, sleep, psychophysiological, things, lots of psych safety, heaps of different topics. And so the populations that I consult to are things like management consultants, the Defence Force, the Centre for Australian Army Leadership, retail banking, finance, the non-government sector. And I also consult to the Australian Olympic swimming team, which I did really good in the last Olympics. And also I was consulting to the Australian Institute of Sport, all like on human performance under pressure stuff. Wow. And as I was just telling you before, I'm also developing an educational platform called BioPsych Academy. And so this is going to be lots of, little micro educations because people have got short attention spans, we know. And so it's going to be on a huge range of topics. And so I really wanted to develop this so my work can become much more accessible to like a wider population. And then I'm writing a book on all this stuff. But also in teaching, I did lots of lecturing at UQ in the business school for years while I was doing my PhD. And so I was teaching on organizational behavior. So things like motivation, ethics, team dynamics, culture, personality, leadership, and all that kind of stuff. So, really, really diverse range of things. But just going back to how I even got into this space. Well, I was stressed and I was like, I was a single mum and I was studying psychology at uni, and I was like thinking, God, there's got to be a better way to live, because everything was just super overwhelming. And I was like, I have to get up in the morning and, do shopping, cooking, cleaning, washing. Then I'd have all these assignments, and then I'd have to do my kids' assignments. And I was like, oh my God, I'm so stressed. And so I decided to do a PhD on stress. Like if you're suffering from something, what do? You study it?
I think it's a real academic way of thinking, because that's what I do. If I've got a topic or something, where I just do like heaps of reading on it to try and find strategies. Yeah.
Research, I think they call it research instead of research. And so, my PhD is really about looking at a preemptive approach to stress. So I was really interested in doing things before things got really bad, instead of like standing at the bottom of the cliff trying to, help people once they're broken. And so I knew that when people talked about their stress in research, they typically were not accurate, that either underreport or over catastrophize, and self-reports are really bad. So I started using objective physiological measures of stress, so namely a stress hormone called cortisol, you might have heard of it.
Yeah.
And immune function markers, and because I did a lot of study in my undergrad in psychoneuroimmunology, medical microbiology and immunology. So I was kind of really interested in this whole kind of science aspect of human behavior. And so I was asked by the military, the army, to come down and do my research at the Australian Special Forces. And because these guys, saw the most amount of stress out of the whole of the army, and they had more people die, and they had more, engagements in war. So I went down there and I sort of interviewed a lot of the guys, and I was like, what do you do? Like, how do you cope in these stressful situations? And what do you wish you knew that you knew now that you didn't know before? And so together with the lead of the human performance wing down there, we developed this training intervention. It was primarily based on emotional intelligence principles. And it was really a holistic view on basically like, what are all the things that either help you stay emotionally stable under stress, or what are the things that just send you off the Richter? That goes from, how you eat, how you sleep, how you interact with people, how you, engage with the world, how you think, like, so, things in the moment, and more broadly about, what happens in your life. And so I spent about 2 years at the Australian Special Forces 2 Commando Regiment doing sort of like this immersive research. And then we got awesome results. And so I was invited to consult back to them and sort of implemented a lot of these findings into their training schedules. And so, when you talk about tough teaching environments, oh my God, like I have to say, fronting up to like a room filled with like these war-hardened Special Forces operators.
Wow.
They've got super high IQs, like, over 140.
Yeah.
That was a pretty tough gig. But, once, they trusted me, and, I actually found them to be some of my best students by far. They had this incredible, thirst for knowledge and desire for excellence, and, to be better. And so it was, really interesting teaching environment. All guys, no females are in the Special Forces. So, but yeah, absolutely, a brilliant experience.
Wow.
And so I still
incredible. So what could you offer them then? I mean, it's kind of like, it's kind of such a bizarre, thing to have. Yeah. What did you offer them? What did they get out? What are your tips? You make these Special Forces people even greater than what they are. That's just incredible.
Yeah. Well, I think that, they really want to know stuff. And I think that I brought value, because I kind of explained to them the warrior condition. So why were they the way they were? Like what is an alpha male? I talked a lot about how I actually got buy-in with this group is, so I was talking about emotional intelligence. So if you think about, you go talk to a group of hard-hitting dudes and you go, let's talk about emotions. You can imagine it'd be like eyes rolling and be like, what? Yeah. So I was like, how can I engage this population in a way that they want, about things they want to know about? And so I started talking about testosterone. And of course, every, alpha guy wants to know about testosterone. And I would like talk about all the benefits of testosterone. And I'd say that, testosterone gets blocked by the stress hormone cortisol. This is true. So the more stressed you are, the less testosterone that you secrete. And so stress blocks your testosterone. They'd be like, what? I'd be like, yeah. And so they'd be like, okay, what do we do about cortisol?
Yeah.
I'm like, well, emotional regulation. They're like, okay, tell me more about this emotional intelligence stuff. I want to know it. And so from there, that was a way in, and they could see the benefit of regulating their emotions. And then so I'd go through all the ways that you could either, increase your testosterone, reduce your cortisol. Like, cortisol is a good thing in the moment, but you don't want to be, squirting out cortisol when you're just about to go to sleep, or if you want to be interacting with your partner, or you want to be doing something quite technical. And so I just really brought a lot of value, and I came at this education from a very scientific perspective. I showed data, I gave, stories, and I think one of the greatest, I suppose, successes of what we did was I had a very experienced, very respected commando stand next to me and say, here's a story of when I was in Afghanistan and when I got blown up and when this happened and when I was under stress, and this is what happened to my body and my mind. And then I'd come in as like the white coat and go, yeah, so this is what happened, and this is why it happened, and this is how you can maybe change it. And I'd bring in heaps of science that kind of related to stories that they really understood. And then the commando would go, yeah, you should listen to this because I wish I knew this. And this is what, experienced commandos do, and this is how you do it. And we were trying to really shorten that learning loop from the guys who'd been there and trying to teach the younger guys who hadn't been there, or trying to teach the guys who'd come back from war about what is it, what happened to them, and why did it happen. And so they really appreciated that. And so I would really also talk about what stress does to your performance. And so for commandos, poor performance can mean getting shot, has quite significant ramifications. So they're really interested in, how do I increase my performance or stop doing the things that will ruin my performance.
Did they have did they think stress was a good thing? Because I know sometimes, even with myself, stress, I don't like feeling stressed, but I do know that stress, speeds me up. It makes me perform. If I'm too relaxed about something, I'm like, oh, I'll get to it later. But
absolutely,
if I'm stressed, it's kind of, so I wondered whether they had a kind of more of a positive relationship to stress than what they should.
They have huge stress tolerance abilities. Like they can withstand enormous amounts of stress, and it's kind of a good thing and a bad thing that because you're so tough, maybe it's harder to operate in normal life where people aren't as tough as you. But exactly what you're saying, you're dead right. Stress can have both a negative and a positive impact. So there's negative stress and there's eustress. So that's that positive, challenging, where you feel like you're under pressure, but it actually makes you quite creative or motivated, and you get stuff done. But I think it's what the intensity and the duration is what changes it. And so the direction of where stress goes, very context dependent, it relates to the person, their thoughts about the situation, but also, things like childhood experiences, installed belief systems, the level of social support you've got is really, really huge. Like your memories about what happened in the past, even your intrauterine environment impacts the way you tolerate stress. So if your mother was really stressed when you were in her belly, it will change your stress responses, and even how much cortisol you produce. There is a genetic factor. And then, more in the moment, there's basic stuff like what's your blood sugar level at? Low blood sugar, probably less tolerant of stress. If you've got lots of inflammation in your body because you've been eating, crap food or alcohol or, substances, that can make you quite stress intolerant. Sleep deprivation is probably the biggest one. If you want to reduce your stress, sleep is absolutely, your biggest bang.
But isn't there I just recently, I'm doing a big project at work at the moment, and I'm so excited. I'm not unhappy about the work. I love the work, but I'm can't sleep. I'm so excited. And I really get that. I mean, I've shared in another previous episodes that, I lost a lot of weight, and knowing that I started to sleep better and then perform better, but I'm finding sometimes I can only sleep if I take, you know, like a little bit of a sleeping tablet, because I just can't, I'm too wired.
Yeah, I mean, actually, I've done a podcast on sleep, and I'll be doing more on them. And you know,
Right.
I could literally talk about sleep
Yeah.
forever. There are so many things you can do apart from taking sleeping tablets, because they actually just sedate you. It's not actually proper sleep.
Yeah,
and
I get that.
It crushes probably really important parts of your sleep architecture.
Yeah.
But you know, there's so many things you can do. And just this one tip. For a meta-analysis of over 5,000 studies, the best sleep modality that's non-drug related is to have a 40-degree centigrade bath, hot bath, 1 to 2 hours before you sleep, because what it does, it counterintuitively helps you lower your core body temperature. So in order for you to get into deep, slow wave sleep, you need to reduce your body temperature by about 2 degrees. And so if you get into a hot shower, your body will automatically actively reduce your core body temperature. And it's a vasodilator. So really, really good thing to do. But you've got to also, for sleep, be in a cold, dark, quiet room, 18 to 21 degrees Celsius. You've got to have done cardiovascular activity, get your heart up during the day. That's also a really good thing. Don't have coffee after 12. And watch what you eat before you go to bed. No sugar, because that'll like burn keep you up.
Okay, I'm gonna add in the bath. I'll let you know how I go. I think I've got the other ones marked. All right, but that one, because that would have, it really does have a huge impact on performance, and then on stress.
But I think with, like, for teachers, when you're talking about academic performance, there's so many things that can really ruin your academic performance. Like, for instance, I've just been reading a whole lot of research about priming. So, what priming is basically what you see or hear or put into your mind before an event, which will change your perspective. And so, like, say you're about to have a maths test and you get shown material that supports, I don't know, like prototypical stereotypes that women are bad at maths, right? Before a maths test. They'll show you actually do worse if you're a female, but better if you're a male. Or even seeing material about a completely like non-maths related debate that you really care about in the direction that you don't agree about can impact your performance. So for instance, I'll give an example, like say you really care deeply about climate change, and then you read an article saying the government's increasing, government subsidies to fossil fuel companies. You'll subsequently do worse on that maths test. Because what we know is stress and negative rumination is a massive cognitive drain. And we know that metabolic energy is kind of like, a bank account, and everything you do draws from that account, whether it's physical activity, negative rumination, like lots of thinking, maths, memories, like all those things, they actually take from that bank account. And we know that negative rumination makes some significant, like hefty withdrawals. So when you actually go to do something cognitively demanding, you don't have enough as much glucose in your brain if you've been doing something that annoys you beforehand. And so your brain's like constantly scanning the environment for threats, and your primitive part of your brain, which is still exactly the same as our hunter-gatherer forebears, same neural architecture. It kind of has a hard time differentiating between like real and present threats and more existential threats, like climate change is going to be happening in the future, or even like negative threats like like social negative appraisals. They really drain, and they set off this stress response system. And so creating those chemicals, those thoughts create chemicals, and those chemicals create a completely different profile, the way you perceive the world, the way you process information, and the way you decision make. So you've got to be really careful about what you do before you go into, say, an exam or a test. Don't argue with your boyfriend. Don't answer that horrible text.
Don't talk to me, husband.
Just protect your emotional state before important. If you're going to teach, a huge, big group of students, like, don't bring up that thing with your kid in the car on the way there, like, be really disciplined about your emotional state before you go into a teaching environment or a learning environment, because it will change the way you process information.
Are children the same as adults in this way?
Yeah, children are, I think, sometimes worse because, you know, not as in worse, but like they're more susceptible. So adults have got this huge, big prefrontal cortex, fully myelinated. We're able to wrestle with our primitive brain and bring in some logic. Where children, you know, their brains aren't fully developed. They're not as like super connected as adults, and they have a very egocentric perspective of the world, which is, you know, a developmental stage where they think that most things relate to them. And so, you know, if, you know, they don't do well in a test, they'll say, oh, there's something wrong with me. Or if the teacher like snubs them off, must be because I'm a terrible person. Like they really, everything, you know, is very, you know, egocentric. And so, yeah, I think that they probably take things a little harder than adults who are a little hardened as you get older.
Yeah.
So
I'm trying to think of strategies here. I was thinking, well, like, you know, before a test, a teacher really has to say, before their students do a test, particularly in primary school, they have to ensure that environment is optimal for all of them. But kind of partly what you're saying is that's going to be different. Like the priming for each of those students in the classroom is going to be different.
Yeah, depending on their personality. Yeah.
Yeah. So it's kind of trying to find strategies that each of them, you know, go do something that you enjoy or read something that you love before the test, because that's going to prime you. There's no, that, you know, doing the same thing for all students is kind of going to be good for some and not for others.
Yeah. When you think about, I'm sure you know this study, the Pygmalion effect. Have you heard of that study?
Yeah,
they separated the class. This is back in the, I think, was it 50s or even 70s? I think it's been replicated. I mean, you couldn't do this now, but they separated the class into blue-eyed kids and brown-eyed kids.
Oh, yes. I didn't know that's what it was called. Yeah.
And they said, all the blue-eyed kids are going to do really well. And the teachers were blind to these conditions. They told the teachers, you know, these students have been, you know, have done a test and they've shown they've got, you know, a lot more promise. And only because of the way the teachers were treating these kids, it had an enduring effect, I think, for up to 2 years. Yeah. So, you know, like the teacher's disposition, the teacher's expectation of that child is huge. And so I think as a teacher, you know, you're already stressed and overwhelmed, under-resourced in many cases. So you've got to come up with like a broad spectrum statement before you teach to get everybody in that optimal hyper-learning perspective. And because if you stress out kids before an exam or before they learn, it's very, very hard for them to learn, because what happens inside your brain is that when children are threatened, or adults or anyone, you know, a part of your brain lights up called the amygdala, which is the threat appraisal part of the brain that, you know, activates in the fight or flight. And so that will then make your brain prioritize fight or flight reactions over deep thinking. The reason being is that, you know, this big prefrontal cortex that's where you do all your learning, and the hippocampus is where you lay down memories, is metabolically super expensive. And so if you're in a fight or flight state, your body's going, you don't need to know stuff right now. You need to run. You need to like flee or fight. And so it'll divert all of its metabolic resources into other actions, such as, you know, your big muscle groups, increasing your heart rate, increasing your lung, you know, input and output. And so you actually just like lose IQ points over under stress. You become quite dumb. And if a kid feels, you know, socially threatened or feels rejected or ostracized, their brains just literally cannot absorb anything. And so you can see this in, you know, minority groups and kids, females in STEM subjects. They are like, you know, if they suffer conscious or unconscious ostracism, just ruins their ability to learn. So I always think a really good, you know, de-stressor is for a teacher to, I don't know, put into the sentence like a belonging future indicator of success. So guys, you know, I'm teaching this because I have faith that, you know, in coming years, you guys are going to be something, and you're going to need to know this when you're, you know, future leaders, or when you're, you know, showing other kids what to do. So if you have like this future projected positivity and faith that they'll be better in the future, that really kind of and they'll belong and people will care about them. They'll be something better in the future. That really kind of dampens that threat response and sort of primes their brains for learning.
Yeah, wow. So kind of, I guess, getting really present for the students to who they are for you as a teacher, and you have to, I think, really authentically see that too. And I'm trying to think, all of us also have these unconscious biases ourselves as teachers. So it's really important that you do the work on yourself as a teacher to kind of unpack, who am I? Do I have an unconscious bias against a certain group or gender, or because that's going to come up in your teaching, and students are going to see that, I think.
Yeah, and like kids are like canaries in the coal mine. They feel stuff. The unspoken is so like obvious to them, and because they're egocentric, like they see all the identity threats even like when they may not exist. You can do like teachers can do microaggressions and they don't even know they're doing it, and they've just completely derailed a kid. And like teachers' jobs are pretty stressful. Like I know they're not getting shot at, but man, like,
well, not in Australia anyway, but it'd be interesting your US study, because they are getting shot at. They are, like, they're going into, I cannot fathom that as a teacher that you would walk in through a metal detector to go into the school. That immediately that stress or that threat would be there for you every day.
You're doing like shooting drills with like kids, like hiding under tables and running through hallways. Like, it's just unbelievable, like how terrifying that would be, even just training little kids to do that. I just think so. I mean, like, even just normal teaching is really stressful, like marking exam time, and and then there's the parents. Like I know
we're insane.
Like some parents are so highly judgmental, and these helicopter parents. I don't know whether they often put your own worth as a teacher or as as an ethical human, and they get super critical. And there's so many parents that, I don't know, they live vicariously through their children to make up for regret of their own unmet potential, or they've spent a lot of money on fees, especially international students. So it can be seriously brutal. And so and what happens when you're under threat, your brain will just revert back to these primitive processes. So you can act in a very reactive and kind of negative way because you're just tired and stressed. You don't really mean to, but it's just you getting in this self-protection mechanism because you're under assault by, these, very judgmental, critical parents or school board or social media or so many things. So you've got to, and like kids get really bad role modeling at home, or they're and then they come to school and don't do well, and all of a sudden it's your fault when they've had really bad parenting. So I really feel for teachers.
Yes, thank God. But it struck me, like in my role as someone who teaches teachers, that there is a gap, I think, in our teacher training, which not necessarily the fault of universities, in that we are mandated to teach certain things to our teachers, by federal and state government. So we wish we would have more control over our programs. But it would be great, I think, to have more in the teacher training around how to deal with stress and how you kind of regulate yourself. Like, how do you deal with a mama bear coming at you? And I think being a mum, like because when I was teaching in schools, I was not a mum, so I could not, I was so surprised by some of the conversations that parents would have with me. Now as a mum, I can have more sympathy for it, because it comes, I can go, okay, that came from a loving place for their child.
They want the best.
They want the best. But I think that a lot of our students are early 20s. They're not parents yet, so they might not necessarily. So I think what kind of training could we incorporate within our teaching institutions for teachers to set them up a bit more powerfully in these stressful situations?
Oh my God, I think stress management and emotional intelligence training, I think, is essential for teachers and kids and parents. Yeah, parents.
Oh, that would be great. Like, you know, you can't enroll your child into this school until you've done this. Oh,
yeah, absolutely. But I highly recommend there's this ruler program, RULE. I don't know if you've heard of it. So this is so it's kind of like this systematic approach to social and emotional intelligence learning, and it was developed at the Yale Center for Emotional Intelligence. And so what this kind of aims to do is, I don't know, infuse these principles of EI into the immune system of preps to year 12 students, and basically informs, you know, leaders how to lead, teachers how to teach, students how to learn, and families how to support students. So that's developed by a researcher called Mark Brackett. So you can Google that, and I think you know what he does is fantastic. And so, you know, and it really does teach you. So, you know, what they talk about is emotional intelligence is basically this model of emotional intelligence is made up of 4 different components. So the ability to perceive emotions, and so that's not only like in yourself, so knowing like to start, you know, I'm starting to get heated here, I'm starting to like spin, you know, having that first instance realization that your emotional state's changing. But also being able to see emotions in other people. So facial recognition, emotional recognition in others. And that's really important for a teacher. You got to be able to like look at a kid's face and like, they're not hearing me, or they're about to do something naughty because of something. And even emotional aperture. So it's about reading the emotions of a group, really important in a classroom. And then the second component is emotional understanding. So understanding the reasons why emotions come about. So knowing, okay, I'm starting to feel this. I get why I did this because this happened. I understand why that kid is acting up. They've got troubles at home. And even it goes to about knowing how emotions, seemingly opposing emotions, can exist at the one time. So for instance, happy and sadness can exist, and we call it melancholy, and knowing how that they mix and transmute and turn to another emotion. And so understanding the complexities of emotions and valences, and how like hot and cold and warm emotions. And then there's using or facilitating that emotional information to make decisions. So integrating that data source into, you know, forecasting and decision making. And then the last, and I think this is the most important for teachers, educators, parents, and students, is emotional management. So being able to manage your emotions, like you go, well, I'm starting to feel like, you know, really angry here. I can't lose it at this kid in this class. So you've got these tactics, you've got these strategies under your belt to stop yourself from losing it. Or knowing how, like, you walk into the classroom, you're absolutely exhausted, you do not feel it. How do you regulate yourself up? How do you get yourself into that mode where you're, you know, in a good position for people to hear what you're saying, and also being able to manage the emotions of others. So knowing how to upregulate kids or downregulate them when they're getting all scatty and naughty, and you go, come on. Or if your kids are all like, you know, oh, like, how do you get collectively, you know, the emotional energy up, and how do you regulate parents? And so they're the 4 components. So perception, understanding, using, and managing. So, you know, if people can just learn, you know, the basics of those 4 things, you know, it puts you so far in advance of where you were. And I think the great thing about emotional intelligence is that it's a skill that can be learned. It can increase over time. You get better at it. There is a gender difference. Can you guess which way that goes? Who scored high in emotional intelligence?
Is it like the base level is different for the genders, and then, but you could probably increase both to the same level, right?
Yeah. Which one who do you think's better?
I don't know. Well, it's interesting because, like, you kind of naturally go, oh, females are more emotionally intelligent, but then, you know, I think sometimes we're very reactive as well. So I don't know.
Or higher on EI, like, we're actually much more perceptive of emotions.
Yeah.
And it's an evolutionary thing we had to be back in our past, that we had to understand the dynamics of the group. Like, we had to know who was aligned with who was mating with who was getting food from who, because if we were all of a sudden on the outer of the clan, you're dead, right? So women become very adept at, you know, social dynamics. So it is
really that I have never thought of it from that perspective.
Keep a gossip
quite
being
cunning.
It's true, yeah. But yeah, so and you can teach it. Like, who would think that the special forces want to know about emotional intelligence? But they're super interested, and so many people are super interested in it. Like like my work with the Olympic swim team.
Yeah, I was gonna. Yeah,
a lot of that was how I got teaching the Olympic swim team was when I was at the Special Forces. John Bertrand, who was the president of Swimming Australia at the time, was friends with the head of the Australian Army, Rick Burr, and they came down and they were looking, what was happening in the Special Forces, and they saw the work that I was doing, and John went, hey, this looks really good. I want some of this, because they were looking for something to help the team with performance under pressure, because he believed that was what went wrong in the Rio Olympics. And so back in, I think, 2017, myself and the head of the Special Forces Human Performance Wing, we went and consulted to the Olympic team. And so we taught, sort of a modified version of what we were teaching the commandos, and to all of the head coaches, then to like the top swimmers and male and female. And so it was about, how to deal with stress, a lot of, it was, this biopsychosocial model, like, how do you become a multidimensional human, even though you're an Olympic swimmer? How do you increase attentional focus, mental rehearsal? We did a lot of stuff about controlling your sympathetic nervous system. We did stress inoculation training. We did distraction training for the relay camps. We did heaps of team dynamics, the power of collectivism in teams. And we looked at the biochemistry of positive team cohesion, and, lots on trust, lots on psychological safety. And, it was, hugely vast array of different topics, but, all with the aim of how do you improve performance. So, yeah, and I think my contribution was like a nanoparticle compared to the amount of training that these guys did. They trained the house down, but it was, they did so well.
But it's like, well, it's the same with doing a degree, right? Doing a degree is only going to get you so far. There's other sorts of training that you need, and I would think that would be the same with the Olympic. I mean, yes, definitely you need a body that is optimal, muscular, I don't know, whatever, and lots of training, but that's only one part of your body. I mean, your brain is a significant part of that. So I would think
it's everything.
Can
at
you
that elite level, I think that most of them are fit, their skills are fairly similar. And I think what differentiates, really successful people and those that don't win is definitely a mindset. It's all their appraisal of the situation, their ability to operate under huge pressure, social pressure, definitely is the differentiator.
Is there something about, Ash Barty really inspires me, the way she is about her sport, and she's so calm, she appears anyway, so calm about it. And even in the way she wins, it's very measured. She seems to have this kind of holistic view around her performance that is, I don't know how to describe it, a little bit separate from necessarily who she is for herself.
Yeah, I reckon that she probably thinks, I don't know if she's even said this, but pressure is a privilege. I think she just looks so completely grateful that she's there. You can see her looking around and you just say, how did I get here? She's obviously incredibly talented and done the hard work, but there's still this almost absolutely wonderful naivety at I can't believe I'm so grateful that I'm actually able to perform on a world stage. And I think that she keeps that fresh love of it, still it's very potent within her, where I think that a lot of athletes have had the love of them smacked out of it, out of their sport, because I think their metric of success has always been, do you win or not win? And so, I think teachers and parents should be really careful that they don't smack the passion out of kids with sport, because they can learn to hate it. And I think what Ash has done is she's still managed somehow to love the sport.
I was going to ask you about kids sport and how because I have my older son in particular really loves sport, and he plays basketball and soccer, and me and my husband have just no like I like training, but our world of sport is like, no, we don't know. But I'd like to support him, but then I'm very reluctant to be too pushy. And as you say, I don't want to, he's so naturally in love with sport. I don't want to push that out of him. And you see sometimes at the soccer fields on the weekends, I think parents are backing off a bit, but you see sometimes some of the conversations you hear parents have with their kids, I'm just like, wow.
Yeah. It is like some of it is akin to a psychological abuse.
Yeah.
And like I said, like probably living vicariously through their own unmet, goals or whatever. There's a really interesting book on this. It's called Range. I can't remember the Epstein, I think maybe the author.
Yeah.
And, and he talks about the benefits of specificity in training, like starting your kid, playing golf at 4 versus letting them play soccer, swim and blah, blah. And what he found in his research was the real true masters, the enduring, the ones who like last and like have very long careers actually did a whole range of sports in their childhood. And they weren't the ones that, picked up one sport and did only that sport for their whole life. There are some outliers, I think, like Tiger was, or, people like that. But if you actually look at the greats, they actually did a lot of different sports because they I don't know, developed different muscle groups, they developed team dynamics, they developed a whole lot of other skills. And I think that if you narrow a child's learning dimensions or their progression, you're really doing them a great disservice. And you're making them often very neurotic in their older lives. Like I know so many athletes are just super neurotic because they don't know anything else. And they haven't been allowed to do anything else, play normally, hurt themselves, muck up, get tired, and kids need to do that. They actually absolutely need to not be put in cotton wool so they can perform on one dimension.
Yeah, I think that too about some of the, like it surprises me it's such that at the primary school level, if your child wants to learn more or do some of these skill-based programs or play for reps or whatever, they have to not only be in their local comp, but then they perform in the rep comp, and then they've got 2 lots of training then. So it's like 4 days of the week they're playing this one sport and training. I was like, this is right for a primary school age child. And then there's like, but if I don't do that, am I squashing his chances?
Yeah, it's a kid by kid basis, I think. Like some kids thrive under that pressure.
Yeah, right.
But some don't. And you really have to like look at it on a case by case situation, because you can break a kid, or you can make them into world champions, and only a parent will know. And you really got to ask yourself honestly, is what I'm doing about me, or is it about the kid? Even stopping them from training. Like my daughter did rowing, and I was like, it was hard. And I said to my other son, please don't play cricket.
Anything but rowing.
Because I was a single mum, and I was like, I really don't want to spend my whole weekend sitting in the hot sun watching you throw a ball around. I'm sorry. But
I used to want my sons to play cricket because I always kind of envisaged just sitting in the park reading my book but maybe you can't do that. You have to actually watch.
The other mothers will be going, did you see that?
Like, you didn't see
the
statistic. Yeah.
When my daughter was doing dancing, Stedford, with the dance mums, I would go and I'd wear my hair down and I'd put my like earphones in so no one could see, and then I'd be listening to my lectures because I was like, oh my, these things had gone for whole weekends, and and I would have to pretend I was watching all the other kids dance. But
that's a good secret. I might take that into, and it kind of strikes me as well. Like we talked about the stress that teachers are under ordinarily, right? But we're coming at the time of recording in New South Wales anyway. We're coming out of lockdown in schools, and Victoria are about to come out, and there's a lot of stress. If you I don't take social media as blanket because I think real life is a bit calmer than social media, but there is a sense that there's kind of this anxious waiting, that cases are going to increase, that your child might get COVID. So how do we deal with that, you know, as teachers, and then I guess as parents or as a society, to ensure that stress is managed in an appropriate way?
I mean, it's a very real and present threat, you know, and I think that you can't deny that these feelings are real and it's authentic. And so you shouldn't be diminishing it, but on the other hand, you shouldn't be catastrophizing it. And because the threat's invisible, and so that really messes with our brains as well. Like, you want to be able to see something and you want to be able to, okay, there's the danger. And because it's invisible, it makes it so much harder. And I think because it's been so polarizing as well, the whole debate around vaccines and no vaccines, or, you know, masks, no masks, particularly in the States. And about whether we should be opening up, whether you've got an economic perspective to recovery or whether you've got a health perspective, they're at odds from each other. And so, and you can have people who you are very, very close to and hold seemingly and absolutely opposing views to you. And you're like, whoa, like, how do I even know? Like, how do you even think like that? And so I think that, you know, everyone has to take a step back and believe, you know, that we don't have to agree and we don't have to hate people we don't agree with. And I think that one other thing is you've really got to manage your stress, because stresses impact your immune function. Cortisol stops your immune function. And so, you know, if you're stressing out about this and you know, you do come in contact with COVID, a stressed out person is going to get a lot sicker than a non-stressed out person. So how do you manage your stress? Well, I think that what you've got to try and do is create controllables in the uncontrollable. And so having process, having routines, having actual things that you can do to make you feel safe and feel like you've got a sense of control. And so whether or not, you know, in the classroom setup, you make everybody clear, like, this is the way that I'm going to run my classroom, and make sure that you articulate, you know, how you feel, be very, you know, authentic, even vulnerable about it, and then say, and this is what I'm going to do about it. So having little micro plans, little micro processes every day, I think really helps with this kind of like this uncertain insanity. I know that's a bit abstract, but routine, process, discipline with your thoughts, empathy, compassion. You know, there's a lot of people out there who are uneducated, maybe don't speak English as well. They don't even know, like, the basic scientific principles of what a virus is or what your immune function does. They might be listening to these crazy, you know, conspiracy theorists on YouTube. And so I think compassion is a huge thing for yourself and for others.
And for others, and it does concern me, you know, the changes in relationships that I think are coming, and how different people manage the health advice and what people do. And, you know, there's already commentary about how Sydney is opening up and what are they doing in Kmart, and it's like, gosh, just to have some compassion for people being in lockdown. But then I can
really watch what media outlets.
Sorry, what?
I was just really be careful about what media outlets that you're looking at and where you're getting your information from. Like, I always will look at you know, the ABC and Sky News, like, so I know, so I get not a balanced view, but I can see what the other people are talking about. Like, you can't be in an echo chamber and just listen to one source, because it's really dangerous.
I think you're right. So final advice for teachers going into the coalface and COVID, what can they do? And I know you also talk about diet as well in your in how you manage stress. And so what other, I mean, you have so much experience, what other things and knowledge can you pass on to us as teachers go back into the classroom with the students? How can we ensure that the next couple of months, particularly in New South Wales and Victoria, are positive places for students?
Yeah, I think, and I do, you know, I talk about this with leaders, and I think teachers are leaders. Is that you can't lead effectively if you can't lead yourself. And so the number one thing that you should do is to manage your physiology, manage your own stress levels, because stress is super contagious. You know, we talk about emotional contagion. You as a teacher going into a teaching environment with young, impressionable children, your stress state will just spread like a virus over those kids. And so you need to really be in the optimal emotional state before you go into that teaching environment. And so what does that mean? It means that number one, you want the biggest bang for your buck, sleep. Sleep consistency is more important than sleep duration. If you can't get much sleep, at least get consistent sleep. So that means going to sleep within the same 15-minute window every night. Okay, so if you can't go to bed early, at least go to bed at 11 o'clock every single night at the same time, because what that does, it tells your body, okay, now it's sleep time. And so it'll automatically down-regulate all the stress hormones and increase all of the sleep hormones. And so you'll get into a deeper, more efficient, more replenishing sleep more efficiently, and you have to spend less time getting to sleep. So number one, sleep consistency. Be careful what you're doing before you go into bed. Alcohol's so terrible for your sleep, unfortunately, which is sad because I love red wine.
I heard it's good for getting to sleep, but then it'll wake you up quicker, right?
Yeah, well, it actually just sedates you. So
right.
Yeah, it's not actually proper sleep. There's all sorts of horrible things to your sleep architecture. Be careful what you eat. Don't have inflammatory products because we know that your gut biome is very, very strongly correlated with your mood, with your cognitive capacity and mental control. And so be careful what you put into your body because a lot of things that we eat create inflammation in your gut and inflammation in your brain. And your body has a hard time differentiating between inflammation and emotional irritability. So you might wake up in the morning and go, I hate my job, I hate my partner, my kids are annoying me. But you just spent yesterday just, trashing out on junk food or drinking alcohol or doing stuff that has created irritants in your body. So try and eat clean. And then by that, I mean, if it's, 2 to 3 degrees further from its natural state, don't eat it. Hydrate a lot.
That's a really good tip. I like that.
And just be really mindful of eat something. Does it make you feel good or not? If it doesn't, don't eat it again, because everyone's so individually different about what their bodies are not. You can't say veganism, vegetarian, meat diet, paleo. We're so different in terms of what's good for our bodies. And it's very much predicated on our gut biome. You could eat a muffin and I could eat a muffin and we'll have completely different blood glucose sugar spikes. And my research is showing this as well. Sleep well, eat well, be very, very careful about your interpersonal relationships and dynamics before you go into the learning environment. As I said, don't have that argument with your partner or the kids on the way to school, because you will secrete stress hormones, cortisol, and they are super contagious and people can subconsciously smell them. And then kids will go, she's in a bad mood. It must be because she knows I haven't done my homework. And then it just sends them off. If you are going into work and you're like, I feel really stressed about this, I feel really worried, get a YouTube that you find really funny. Do anything you can to make yourself laugh. Laughing's the best thing. If you can't laugh, of course, breathing, mindfulness, get all those apps, incredibly good. And then put yourself into that higher order perspective. Why am I doing this? Look at your greater North Star. I'm an educator. I have a really significant impact in the lives of these children. I can really turn the trajectory of these children's futures by my presence and by my words. And that's really important. So, bring your higher self, your better self, your bigger self to that environment, because you're going to have a huge repercussion for that next generation. Might be just one classroom, but there is a multiplying effect of your ability to change the minds, the lives of others. So I think, if you're feeling in the doldrums, abstract up to that higher order perspective.
That's beautiful. I got goosebumps while you were creating that, Jemma. That was absolutely beautiful. Thank you so much. Thank you for coming on the podcast. Definitely want to have you back in when I would love to hear about that US research and all the other things you're up to. So thank you for coming on.
Thank you so much for having me, and good luck.
Thank you. And this has been another episode of Teaching Heroes, and we'll see you all next week. Bye.